New Line Cinema's Toby Emmerich approached Platinum Dunes producers Michael Bay, Brad Fuller, and Andrew Form about remaking Friday the 13th in the same way they restarted the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. They agreed and spent over a year obtaining the film rights from Paramount Pictures, New Line, and Crystal Lake Entertainment, which was run by Sean S. Cunningham, the creator of Friday the 13th. Paramount executives gave Platinum Dunes producers a license to use anything from the original films, including the title. Paramount was given the rights to distribute the film internationally, and New Line retained U.S. distribution rights. Fuller and Form said they did not want to make Friday the 13th Part 11 or 12, but wanted to rework the mythology. They liked elements from the first 4 films, such as plot points and ways characters were killed, and planned to use these in the remake, which they did with Paramount's approval. The producers initially expressed an interest in using Tommy Jarvis, a recurring character who first appeared in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, but the idea was scrapped. Though the producers decided that Friday the 13th would not be an origin story, they said that they wanted to work out a logical origin story for Jason that would provide a sense of history as the film progressed. Unlike both horror remakes, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Amityville Horror, which were also produced by Bay, Form, and Fuller, it was decided that Friday the 13th would not be a period piece. Form and Fuller said the film was not strictly a remake, so there was no reason they could not set the story in the 2000s. In October 2007, Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, the writers of Freddy vs. Jason, were hired to write a script for Friday the 13th. Jonathan Liebesman, the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, was in negotiations to direct the film, but scheduling conflicts meant he was unavailable. Samuel Bayer turned down the offer to direct. John Moore was considered for the directing job at early stages of production. In 2005, before Platinum Dunes took control of rebooting the property, several outlets reported that Quentin Tarantino was set to write and direct the Friday the 13th film, with the working title The Ultimate Jason Voorhees Movie. Days later, Tarantino denied the claims, saying he had merely talked to New Line about the possibility. Fuller and Form would ultimately choose Marcus Nispel as director. Nispel was apprehensive about taking the job, mainly because he would be taking over another film franchise. Marcus Nispel had previously directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Form and Fuller recognized the iconic status of the music used in the first 4 Friday the 13th films. For their 2009 film, they immediately had the studio obtain the licensing rights to the music, which was composed and originally performed by Harry Manfredini. They did not plan to use the score in its entirety, but they used Steve Jablonsky to compose a score that was reminiscent of Manfredini's and created the atmosphere for the 2009 film. While on hiatus from his show Supernatural, Jared Padalecki was cast as Clay Miller. Scout Taylor Compton originally auditioned for the role of Jenna, which eventually went to Danielle Panabaker. Jennifer Scioli had auditioned for the role of Whitney Miller, but that role would eventually go to Amanda Rigetti. Travis Van Winkle would get the role of Trent. Juliana Gill would be cast as Bree. Aaron Yu actually won the role of Chewie, very close to shooting. Up until then, one of the top choices to play him was David Blue. Ryan Hansen would be cast as Nolan. Arlen Escarpita would be cast as Lawrence. And Willa Ford was cast as Chelsea, who was given 10 days to learn how to wakeboard. Adrian King, star of the original 1980 film, was approached by producers Andrew Form and Bradley Fuller to do a cameo appearance during pre-production. A few days later, the producers called her back and told her they didn't want anyone from the original film to appear in the remake. Richard Burgi wasn't cast as Sheriff Brackey until 12 hours before they needed to begin filming his character's scenes. Derek Mears would be cast to play Jason. Derek Mears is the 8th actor to portray Jason. The character of Sheriff Brackey, played by Richard Burgi, is named after author Peter Brackey, who wrote the book Crystal Lake Memories: The Complete History of Friday the 13th. According to co-writer Damian Shannon, the character of Jason Voorhees was re-envisioned as more territorial, like a hunter, someone who doesn't kill people at random but will defend his territory from anyone invading it. Jason just randomly appearing out of thin air as in the earlier films wouldn't fly this time around, so it decided he traveled via a series of underground tunnels. The script originally had Jenna dying later on in the film than she did in the final cut. In the finished film, Jenna is killed as Clay and Whitney are pulling her out of Jason's lair. Originally, Jenna would have hidden from Jason in the abandoned bus with Clay, and Whitney, after escaping from his lair, exchanged dialogue with Clay about doing something more romantic on the next date, and then she would have been killed by Jason with the fire extinguisher. Originally, Willa Ford's character, Chelsea, is stranded on the lake for hours after she sees Jason standing on the shore. Eventually, the girl would tire and drown. Shannon and Swift felt this was something they had not seen in slasher films, but later decided to make the death quicker and more visceral. This would mark the first time Paramount Pictures had anything to do with the Friday the 13th series since Jason Takes Manhattan in 1989, and the end of the Friday the 13th, the series, in 1990. This movie, Jason wears both the legendary hockey mask and the burlap sack. Although neither of those appeared in the original Friday the 13th from 1980, the burlap sack was first worn by Jason in Friday the 13th Part 2 in 1981, and the hockey mask did not appear until Friday the 13th Part 3 in 1982. The title card of the movie isn't displayed until the end of the opening segment, nearly 25 minutes into the film, which is one of the longest prologues for a horror movie film ever. Friday the 13th was shot in Austin, Texas. The film's setting is supposed to be New Jersey, a tribute to the original film. Friday the 13th was released on February 13th, 2009. With $42.2 million, it had the biggest opening weekend of a horror remake, beating out former record holder The Grudge. The film received mainly negative reviews and earned approximately $19 million on its opening night and $40 million during its opening weekend. Producer Michael Bay walked out of the movie premiere, stating that the movie featured too much sex. A follow-up to 2009's Friday the 13th was slated for release on October 13th, 2017, and was all set to go into production in a matter of weeks, but in February 2017 it was announced that Paramount had pulled the plug on the project. The film was nominated for many awards in 2009 and 2010, including a Fangoria Chainsaw Award for Worst Film, which it won. Friday the 13th was released on DVD and Blu-ray on June 16, 2009, and featured in the book Crystal Lake Memories, released in November 2005, as well as in DVD and Blu-ray versions of the book, released in 2015, and was released in a box set on September 13, 2013. I hope you've enjoyed this brief look at the 2009 remake of Friday the 13th, and I thank you for watching.